American Dad has always had a bit of a rocky reputation, especially in its early years. I mean, it came from the same creator as Family Guy, and for a very long time people wrote it off as Family Guy with politics. And to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong. The show actually started off as post 9/11 satire, Stan Smith being this over-the-top CIA dad absolutely obsessed with the American dream. A stay-at-home wife, a son who excelled at every sport he played, and a daughter who would grow up to marry a nice Republican man. But instead, he got a rebellious hippie daughter, a son who preferred to play pretend rather than pick up a ball, an alien with more wigs than a cosplayer, and a fish with a German's brain. That nuclear family absolutely nuked. But something weird happened over time. While Seth MacFarlane eventually became more and more hands-off with the series, American Dad actually slowly evolved. The political satire started to fade more and more into the background with each passing season, and what eventually took its place was utter chaos. You had time travel, musical numbers, sentient hot tubs, and Christmas demons. It went from being a grounded suburban parody to a full-on sci-fi fantasy, and it somehow worked. And here's the part that makes American Dad stand out. It didn't just get weirder, it actually got better. Unlike other sitcoms that replay the same jokes for 10 seasons straight, American Dad actually lets his characters grow and change. And no other character proves this more than Jeff Fischer. Jeff has been around since the first episode of the series. He was Haley's stoner boyfriend, later turned husband. And at first, he was nothing more than a walking stereotype, a sweet, aimless stoner who just lived in his van. He wasn't annoying by any means, but he wasn't exactly vital to the show either. In fact, there's been a few times that they just write Jeff out so Haley can date someone else just for a plot point and some conflict. But when he was there, he was literally just there, a background prop for Stan and Haley to argue over. But then the show did something completely unexpected. They didn't just write Jeff off or phase him out again. They launched him into the stratosphere. And no, not metaphorically. They literally sent him into deep space. What could have been just a cheap gag turned into something surprisingly way more ambitious. Jeff's whole space arc took a mostly throwaway character and gave him emotional depth, heroic stakes, and somehow made him funnier in the process. And that episode where that evolution starts, it's not just good, it might be one of the best episodes in the entire series. So, let's talk about Jeff Fischer.
Oh my god, what are you?
Now, the start of Jeff's character arc actually starts in one of the most Roger ways possible. After getting tired of needing to wear clothes around the house constantly, Roger decides to tell Jeff that he's actually an imaginary friend, now forcing everyone else around the house to act along. And, of course, Roger takes full advantage of it, going out of his way to cause as much chaos as possible. And eventually, Klaus wasn't caught up on the situation and breaks that reality for Jeff. And now, in order to keep Roger's secret, more for his family's own safety rather than Roger's, Stan now has to make the choice to either kill Roger or Jeff. Well, Roger informs the family that he can just phone home and get his spaceship sent back to Earth to pick him up and take him home. Now, in my opinion, this feels a little emotionally manipulative. Well, mostly because of that montage at the end completely dedicated to Roger at the end of the episode. It actually reminds me of when Seth MacFarlane killed off Brian and then brought him back a few episodes later and told everyone else to never take those you love for granted because they could be gone in a flash on Twitter. And yeah, okay, I guess. Actually, I remember when that episode came out in junior high and being super confused and thinking that Paul Walker was Brian's voice actor and that him dying meant that Brian had to as well. I don't know, insane stuff. Anyways, as I was saying, once Jeff disappears, he actually becomes one of the most well-developed characters in the series. He goes from just being that loser stoner husband to, well, still somewhat a loser and still a stoner, but he gets real growth, which we will get to very soon. So, yeah, Roger's supposed departure ends up being a bait and switch, but Jeff, he really does disappear. And this is where it gets interesting. Instead of writing Jeff off with the same Reginald treatment, if you know, or bringing him back next week with no explanation as some sort of one-off gag, the writers do something genuinely bold and absolutely surprising. They follow Jeff into space. In the very next episode that we talk about, Lost in Space, we get some of the most important growth in the entire show. And it also has one of the best songs in the entire show, and that's saying a lot. American Dad is known for some of the best music for any animated sitcoms. I actually think that some songs are better than anything Family Guy has done. They're iconic. When people talk about American Dad, they usually bring up the music first, such as the iconic B12 or I'm a Virgin featuring The Weeknd, and the other popular song Hot Tub of Love written by CeeLo Green. And those are just the first four that pop into my head. A lot of the music is really good. In fact, there is a whole B-plot in an episode made to the tune of Trapped in the Closet, R. Kelly's Iliadic, Homer-esque album. Sorry, I completely butchered that. Entirely sang by Steve. But back to the topic, this song choice was interesting because this song wasn't made for American Dad. In fact, it was the complete opposite. This song actually inspired the episode. How? Well, let's talk about it.
A sight for sore eyes to the blind would be awful majestic.
This episode is probably one of the best of the series because it focuses entirely on Jeff and the world outside of, well, the confines of the show. We meet so many other aliens like Roger, and quick note, I actually love all the designs. It's so interesting that they made Roger look still recognizable enough to know that it's supposed to be where he's from, but unique enough to know what he looks like when we see him with another person of the same species. Anyways, the episode starts off with Jeff ending up on a ship full of gray space aliens. Side note, I googled it and I searched everywhere, even the third page of Google, and his species is just called gray space alien, nothing like a decapodian, and I feel like it's a little disappointing, honestly. They should be called something a lot more interesting in my opinion. Anyways, the more you know. As I was saying before I got distracted, he is forced to become a slave of sorts. Except the whole ship is converted to be a shopping mall, which we later find out is due to the Emperor's breakup that made him believe that love isn't real. And that's the real plot of this episode. It's about Jeff and Haley's relationship, even if Haley isn't in the episode. Well, not directly, but we'll get into that. Also, Sinbad is there for some reason. It's pretty funny and they have an enjoyable dynamic, so I guess I'll let it pass. Well, Jeff says that he knows what true love is and that he goes to challenge the test by the Majestic. However, there is a caveat. If he fails and can't prove that he loves Haley, he has to go through the process called the smoothening, which you can probably guess what that means. Well, he goes to take the test, and as it happens, we see that they go through Jeff's memories, showing the crappy husband that he was to Haley, revealing to everyone else watching that he did not actually love her. Now defeated, the shape-shifting bartender offers him one last night of, well, let's just take her word for it. And as he goes to sleep with her, he realizes that it isn't Haley he'd be sleeping with, that he didn't learn to grow and change for this random woman pretending to be his wife. And he has a realization. There were a lot of good moments in his relationship, ones that weren't even played for everyone else. All that were played were bad and awful parts. And soon after, he goes to visit the Majestic to get answers. And answers he does find. The Majestic immediately feels bad for manipulating the things shown for the test, explaining that he'd be thrown out into space by the Emperor if he showed any of the good memories. As he starts crying, Jeff forgives him, and the Majestic starts to explain that the reason the Emperor is like that is because he too was in love. But he got his heart broken and became addicted to shopping, turning the entire ship into a shopping mall. It takes surprisingly very little convincing to make the Majestic go along with Jeff's plans to start a rebellion. The Majestic actually excited to go along with his plans. So, as the ceremony starts to make Jeff smooth, it's revealed once his pants are pulled down that it was actually the shape-shifting bartender pretending to be him. Jeff, riding in on the Majestic, now trying to show everyone that there is love in the world and revealing that to the Emperor, who was not only in love, but he was in love with the one and only Roger Smith, who ended up cheating on him with a human. Also, quick note and slight theory, Roger's origins as to why he was put onto Earth has changed several times. But the one that stuck out to me the most was the one where he thought he was the most important person in the world, going by the name the Decider. He held the decision to decide if the human race was to live or die. Except not really, because as the episode continues, we actually learn that he was a space test pilot for testing safety equipment, and that if any humans found his body or the ship, they were to just ignore it. And this is where my theory kicks in. I feel like that was probably just the Emperor taking the breakup a lot harder and lying to Roger about what exactly he'd be doing on Earth. Essentially, getting petty revenge on him. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like he's one of the only ones on this backwater planet, Earth. Anyways, back to the story. Jeff escapes as the rebellion breaks out. Only armed with the ghost of Sinbad and an escape pod, he now has to find his way back home.
I'll never forget you, Jeff Fischer.
And nearly an entire season later, we finally see Jeff again. He's actually still in space and still trying to find his way back home. And also, Sinbad is still there with him, which is actually really nice to see. The episode starts off with Haley's depression about losing Jeff 1 year ago. As she holds herself off in her room, Stan decides to smoke her out, which understandably lands her in the hospital. While they're in the burn unit, she meets a janitor named millionaire Matt Davis, who, despite his name, actually has over twice that much in his bank account. As Haley enjoys her time with them, Steve lets her know that Jeff is actually on the other end of the ham radio and starts chatting with her, almost like he never even left. She becomes obsessed with his return, patiently waiting for his arrival. Eventually, she starts putting off with meeting Matt again, until she finally sees him again for another dinner date. He tells her that he bought them plane tickets to travel the world together, and then says that she should think about it before giving him a definitive answer. As she goes to make her decision, Jeff lets her know that he found a wormhole that will bring him directly back to Earth, so she ends up ripping the tickets, deciding that Jeff is who she wants. Also, there's this cool scene where they jump into the wormhole, and there's plenty of blink and you'll miss it frames and references for Jeff and Sinbad. So, let's go over a few. There's a picture of them as their IRL voice actors. Also, fun fact, Jeff Fischer is played by someone named Jeff Fischer. There's also Legos, I think. There's furries, Futurama characters, themselves again as a second time, worms, and the Powerpuff Girls style. There are many more I didn't cover, but it was still really nice to see. Let me know if you see any that you recognize. Well, after traveling through time and space to get to Haley again, 60 years have passed. A lot happened then. And it's interesting to see how the Smiths look after that much time has passed. Haley looks considerably older, but still wearing the same clothes. Stan, who is now a gorilla, and Francine, who had a little work done, but it's hardly noticeable. Also, another funny mention is that Snot and Steve end up getting married, and they have been married since they were in their very early 20s because they made a promise to each other that they would get married if they were single by the time they turned 21, which, in retrospect, wasn't nearly long enough. And speaking of marriage, Roger also got married too and ended up with 2 sons. Anyways, as Stan goes to attack Jeff for making Haley wait for 60 years to get back, she gets so stressed that she has a heart attack, landing her back in the hospital. There, he meets millionaire Matt Davis himself, realizing that making her wait for him to get back would arguably be worse for her. He goes back to the ship and returns to the wormhole, just in time to miss the 8 revolts, which thankfully Stan had prepared for. Oh, never mind. Jeff, now back in space, tells Haley that he couldn't find the wormhole, but that he'll still keep looking for it. But he parts with Haley with one final note, that she shouldn't wait for him because he has no idea how long it will be until he's back, so she decides that she should go with Matt. Until Roger kills him.
You may be Jeff on the outside, but you're not Jeff up here.
Now, a lot has happened between the last episode and this one, both in the show and real life, but let's start with the most important one. American Dad being bought by TBS from Fox. Back in 2014, TBS acquired the rights to the Fox show American Dad for 10 seasons. This put a long pause on Jeff's story, a hiatus of sorts, until TBS got their hands on it. Actually, another fun fact, that contract with TBS I mentioned before just ended and American Dad will be returning to Fox and has been renewed for a couple more seasons. My only hope is that American Dad doesn't suffer the same writing as Family Guy, where all the characters are miserable and depressed and hate each other. Now, look, American Dad may be a lot of things, but at its core, it has a lot of heart and fun. Personally, I feel that the TBS seasons are some of the best ones. My top 3 episodes are coming from that very run, but maybe that's because they're the most nostalgic to me. I actually remember sitting in my aunt's room seeing commercials for New Weekly American American Dad episodes premiering on both TBS and Adult Swim every Wednesday. I actually remember one commercial sticking out to me was the one where Stan pretends to be Steve's girlfriend by using an avatar from the CIA. I only remember that one because the girl he was pretending to be shared the same name as my late aunt. So, yeah. Anyways, Jeff's back. He shows up on the Smith's doorstep and immediately Haley runs to him, smothering him with love. She hasn't seen him for at least 2 years up until this point, and when he returns, Stan immediately tries to kill him again. The reasoning for this is the same one as before, because he believes that Jeff will talk, exposing Roger's existence to the world. Except Jeff has grown and seen things in space far more mind-blowing than an alien living inside the house. So Stan decides to let him live. But it's revealed that it isn't actually Jeff. It's an alien called a Collector trying to gain knowledge about things on Earth. You see, I like this episode a lot because it has a lot of sci-fi elements in it, including an item called the Blorfer, which is just a fax machine that sends physical objects. Well, the fake Jeff and Stan actually become fast friends, Stan even taking Jeff out to go shooting and share frozen yogurt together. They become very close, the fake Jeff even feeling a little touched by all these moments of human kindness around him. Well, Haley finds out that Jeff is not her Jeff, so she and Roger go through the Blorf machine to try and find him. Here, we learn that the Collectors were known as the Dissectors before, dissecting everything that came into contact with them in order to learn more about it. We see that Jeff, the real one, had suffered that same fate. Well, Stan and the fake Jeff find out where Haley and Roger went, and they quickly go up to save them, narrowly saving them from being dissected. Well, Stan and fake Jeff offer some froyo, and because of that, the Collectors spare Haley and Roger. But, understandably, Haley is distraught because her Jeff was already dissected. There's this moment that actually mirrors what Jeff said to the alien bartender back in Lost in Space. How he may look like Jeff, but he wasn't really Jeff. He wasn't the person that she fell in love with. That same sentiment that he shared back all those episodes ago. Well, fake Jeff offers his body as sacrifice so the real Jeff can live on, reminiscing on the fact that Stan and his friends had sacrificed their froyo so he can have more. That simple act of kindness really went a long way. As they leave to go back home, Roger tells them that their minds will be wiped with this experience and that none of them except for him will be able to remember because of like alien space magic or something, to which Stan takes full advantage of.
I just need to buy a Turin, play it for Haley, and show her I'm not totally crazy.
Well, that was a lot. But thankfully, we are not done yet. I still have 2 other very important episodes to go through. But first, I want to bring up something. These events have had a lasting effect on Jeff in many ways. One of those ways being Season 11, Episode 22, where after drinking some hallucinogenic tea, he trips so hard that he lives an entire lifetime on another planet, where he learned to master a musical instrument called a Turin, which is described as a lute and a bagpipe rolled into one, where the body of the lute is the bag of a bagpipe, and the body is soft because it is made from the skin of a yarrowwood fruit. Female though, otherwise it would try to bite him. Now, as the B plot for this episode progresses, we actually learn more about it, such as the ancient word for it is called dragonwood, which makes sense because it's used to make an instrument that soothes dragons. And as they go to retrieve some, we find out that it's actually the most common wood on the planet that Jeff had taken a trip into, Gui. It grows when you sleep by it and it becomes swollen with dreams, but they end up just getting plywood instead. And as Jeff goes to play it for everyone for the first time, he realizes that it actually isn't the right time. Well, the right time is when Avery, in a drugged rampage from the A-plot of this episode, starts to run riot. And here, Jeff realizes that this is the perfect time to play the Turin. He lies on the ground and starts to play it, which calms down Bullock, effectively proving to everyone that he does in fact know how to play it. And I mean, he's no Pooh Abermarle, but he seems to play it well for someone with only one mouth. Now, you're probably wondering why I brought all of this up. Well, I have another fan theory. You see, when Jeff was in space, he was picked up by the Collectors, being dissected and studied. Well, they have collected and dissected and studied other things as well from other planets. And as I mentioned in the last section, Jeff's body isn't his anymore. It's the old Collector who sacrificed himself. Now, my theory is that when Jeff drank the tea, he was actually unlocking the muscle memory of the Turin and how it was produced and played, effectively giving him the knowledge about this random instrument from another world. Now, this is just a theory, and I don't have any real evidence backing it up. I just thought it'd be interesting to bring up, so let me know what you guys think down below.
What's happening is that I'm giving you two my blessing to have children.
And this wasn't the only lasting effect on Jeff either. Eventually, Jeff and Haley decide that they want to have a baby. Well, Stan isn't ready to become a grandfather because it means that he would have to face the fact that he's getting older and eventually needing to come face to face with his own morality. To which he tries everything in his power to stop them from having a kid, meddling with them every chance he gets and nearly getting Jeff killed at one point. Well, Stan comes to terms with this, saying that he realizes that the best time to have kids, or in his case grandkids, is when they're still young. If they wait until he's too old, then he will become too frail to take care of them. In fact, he remembers the fact that he killed his own grandfather by drowning him in a pool. Not wanting to share that same fate, he gives him his blessing to have children. But not really, because the actual lasting effects of Jeff being in space and being part alien means that he can't have children.
You doof. I can't wait to have your big doofy baby.
Well, that isn't entirely the case. Now, this episode has a lot to talk about. Despite being this episode, it barely has Jeff in it, but also, he's been in it the entire time. You see, when Jeff and Haley have a hard time trying to conceive, Roger, in a fit of boredom, tells everyone that it's because Jeff's only human part is his brain. The rest of his body is an alien. Which happens to explain why his pee is slightly brighter and why he hasn't felt the want or need to sleep in a year. And the only way to be able to conceive is if Jeff gave his brain to a birthing alien on their heat cycle, which coincidentally Roger just so happens to be on. With little convincing, Roger agrees and then, oh my god. Well, on the bright side, he now has a 10% chance to be pregnant. Well, due to the fact that Roger's an alien, it's not like they can go to a real doctor. So, they instead had to go to Dr. Calgary, who deserves his own dedicated video, to see if Roger is, in fact, pregnant. Well, they find out he is. Congrats! But not really. This actually takes a wild turn, because now Roger's going full monster mommy, deciding everything for Jeff, even changing his name to Tristan. He completely ignores Haley's request to just give birth to Jeff so it can all be over with. Well, Roger ends up running away, feeling like he isn't being heard. And after Haley finds him, she tells him that he is, in fact, being heard, and that she will let him do whatever he wants with Jeff, and Roger decides to just let Jeff be who he wants. After Roger gives birth to Jeff, which when he's born he comes out looking like very dehydrated, but it's okay because Roger's mouth is juicy for this very purpose. Haley and Jeff finally have a chance to talk and decide that it's too early for them to have a baby, mostly because Jeff himself still feels like he's too young to have one at this point. And it may have taken a while, but we finally have human Jeff again.
Our daughter's new husband just made 50 grand in half a day. Maybe he's not the idiot we thought he was.
While American Dad was seen as a Family Guy clone about politics in its earliest seasons, it eventually grew beyond that. Characters have evolved and changed. Literally, Jeff himself is not even the same Jeff we saw at the beginning of the series. That Jeff is long gone up in space with the collectors, sorta. At least his body is, from what we know. Now, I actually want to talk a little bit more about Jeff, because he's actually my favorite character in American Dad. Listen, he may be stupid, but he has a lot of heart. He's trusting and naive. He's not very hardworking, but he makes up for it by being really funny at times. Every time he's part of the plot, I just know it's either going to be really funny or very heartfelt. And that's what makes Jeff such an interesting character. The whole show, for that fact. It has heart, it has growth, it changes and goes with the flow, and I think that's why I personally prefer it over Family Guy. Another thing that I want to talk about with Jeff is how he is with the Smiths outside of Haley. With Steve Smith, Jeff is more of an older brother figure. In one of the first real episodes they interact, Steve gets him to play a parody of World of Warcraft in the episode Dungeons & Wagons, Season 2, Episode 5. This happens after Haley breaks up with Jeff. Then, after the space incident, Steve goes looking for an older brother figure, finding it in Jeff in the Season 16 episode Shakedown Steve, where Jeff takes Steve to a fish festival, teaching him a whole new world, just as Steve did with that World of Warcraft game. Now, with Francine, Jeff's relationship is a bit more interesting because there have been multiple times where it's brought up that Jeff is attracted to Francine, it being made forefront in Season 7, Episode 13, Dr. Claustus, and they've also gotten stoned together before as well. But with Stan, it's very on and off. Some episodes Stan doesn't like Jeff, like in the episode Joint Custody, where Stan has a new appreciation for Jeff after finding out that Jeff's father is a huge asshole. But then there are other episodes, such as Lumberjack, Season 16, Episode 12, where Jeff shows real promise for one of Stan's weird passions, becoming a lumberjack, eventually pissing Stan off and nearly getting Jeff killed again. Jeff and Klaus's history is a bit wonky. One of the main episodes coming to mind is from Season 18, Episode 14, The Pleasanting at Smith House, where Jeff and Klaus like to go to estate sales and get weird stuff and reselling it to other people. And Klaus ends up buying a comb with a wraith inside. Klaus dates her, prioritizing their relationship over his friendship with Jeff, even going as far as to share his dream with his girlfriend over his friend. And, of course, Roger is the whole reason this arc started, with his secret being exposed and Jeff being unable to keep his mouth shut. Since then, they've been seen to get along. In one episode, Roger invites Jeff into his passion, chivalric cabaret, as seen in Cheek to Cheek, A Stripper's Story, Season 14, Episode 22, where Roger wants to do male stripping the old-fashioned way, Jeff seeing it as less profitable. But still wanting to support Roger, Jeff takes up male stripping on the side to help save up money for Roger's dream, to own a male chivalric cabaret club called JJ's. Jeff Fischer is truly a one-of-a-kind character. Oh my god. I just want to thank you guys for watching, by the way. I had a lot of fun diving into this storyline and being able to talk about it. Jeff is one of my favorite characters in American Dad, so it felt right that my first video talking about the show would be about him and his journey as a character. When I first started writing this script, I was originally just going to talk about Lost in Space, but I felt like just going into one episode really wasn't enough. I needed to really stand back to get the full scope of not just that episode, but Jeff's journey as a whole, and it took this entire video to do it. Anyways, I want to thank you all again for watching. Remember to like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, and while you're here, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified for more videos. And until next time, stay animated. Bye!
Did someone just drop a house